Please welcome to the our session about Arctic films and how Arctic films are going to Hollywood. And I want to introduce my panelists. My name is Liisa Holmberg, and I'm working in the Arctic Indigenous Film Fund, which is located in Kautokeino in Norway, but we are working all the Arctic. And then I have next to me Laufey Guðjónsdóttir, the director of Icelandic Film Center. I have Lajla Utsi, who is the managing director of the International Sámi Film Institute and also Arctic Indigenous Film Fund. And then we have Baltasar Kormákur, who is the Icelandic film director and producer. I'm starting with you, Baltasar. We have this title, Arctic Films Goes to Hollywood, but you have gone there long time ago. And you are born here in Reykjavik, and you started your career here in the theater, and then you studied the film, and you made 101 Reykjavik, which was a big success. You were winning prizes all over the world, and then you were making the Icelandic big successful films like The Sea, A Little Trip to Heaven, Jar City, White Night Wedding, and they were winning all over the world prizes, but then it became the big thing, the Deep. And it was winning the Toronto Film Festival, it was Oscar-nominated film, and then I'm name-dropping a little bit here. It is the Inhale with Sam Shepard. It was Contraband with Mark Wahlberg, Two Guns, Denzel Washington, and then it was Everest. And you went to Hollywood, but you came back to Reykjavik, and then you went back, and then you came back here, and then, you know, you are like a nomadic person. So I'm asking you, what happened? Why you wanted to locate it here in Iceland?
Well, thank you. It was mostly right what you said. Deep was not Oscar nominated; it was shortlisted. But but yes, I started with the Icelandic theater and then moved to Icelandic films. I started as an actor, then a director, and then I got successful and I got opportunities in the West. And Hollywood is just an idea. I think when people think about Hollywood, they mostly think about crappy films and very commercial films. But it's an idea, you know. It doesn't have any home. Money in Hollywood comes from everywhere, first of all, you know. So, but basically, when we talk about it, and I want to say this because when we say Indigenous goes to Hollywood, it can be misunderstood, you know, because the way Hollywood has interpreted Indigenous people is not very nice through history. But so I'll come to that later. Yes, I'm still a big part of that system. I just finished a film, or I'm working on a film called Beast, which I did in South Africa with Idris Elba, and that's for Universal Studios. But at the same time, I will open up a studio in Iceland, which is one of the biggest studios, sound stages in Europe. And I believe there is a future in this business plan. I invested all my money in it, so I better be. So, and the reason why I'm here is not only to brag about my career, you know. It's because when I went to, and I still have trouble pronouncing Kautokeino. I was invited I'm in the board of the European Film Academy. I met Lajla and Liisa, and I was just doing my thing there, and they dragged me into the kind of the Sámi things and gave me reindeer for every meal for many days. and then asked me to support the Sámi Film Institute. And I couldn't say no. There's no way to say no to these women. And first of all, I thought, yes, I'll support. And then they kept on calling. And then they brought me to Nuuk and made me an ambassador of the Indigenous Film Fund. The reason I actually joined this, because now I realized I was deep in, and I got better deliver, is that I really love this idea. I think it's a fantastic idea. I think, and most people here know more about the Arctic than I do, but I know that the Arctic is in demand. And I know that the way the film industry is changing, diversity. And when we talk about diversity, we talk about women and black people mostly, but we don't necessarily talk about indigenous people. And I believe the voice of the indigenous people has to be heard. And when you say indigenous people go to Hollywood, for me it means indigenous people have to run their own, they have to tell their own stories through this mega distribution. Because you can make a lot of small movies, it's very respectable, but people won't see them. And you have to get in the shelves, you have to get into Netflix, you have to get into those places where people see and understand this culture. But that doesn't happen overnight. I was just telling them backstage that we should create an Arctic Indigenous stamp that you like, you know, that if you make a film about Samis or Inuits, you have to have a certain amount of people involved in that. And you have to have them there consulting the film, and then they will get the Arctic Indigenous stamp, which will mean a lot. Like, what do we call this Swedish stamp that you get for...
you mean the gender?
Yeah, the gender stamp, you know, if women need to talk to each other about something else than men in a movie. And then you get the stamp. And it's become a big thing.
Yeah.
What's it called?
Yeah.
Bechtel, yeah. So I think in this way you can pressure those big companies to be more involved with the indigenous culture. And also hire those people. And in the end, they will also be making the films. And this is my part in this, and this is why I...
You are the ambassador of...
Yes, I am the ambassador. I'm sure there's a lot of ambassadors here, but, but I'm very proud of my title.
Ambassador of the Arctic Indigenous Film Fund.
And I also, because another thing I want to say, when I started in the Icelandic film industry, it was very much like your industry, like we were in Nuuk, like the Greenland industry. Very few films, very underfinanced. But in Iceland, there's been a magic, yes. I believe, you know. There was the government here has in many ways stepped up. Of course, they are now talking about doing even better. And I think it's very, they with this tax refund. And I think that the business in itself has multiplied in those years since I started. And now we are actually a real industry. We can run a studio. You know, I did a show called Katla for Netflix. It was fully financed by Netflix and the rebate. We didn't even have to apply to the Film Fund. And this you wouldn't have thought was possible 5 years back, that a major studio would actually finance something in Icelandic to show to the world. And this is happening. And I believe the same can happen for Samis, Inuits. So yeah. I'm very optimistic person. No, but it takes some time, but it will happen if there is a united power.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
And then the Baltasar was starting about the miracle of the Icelandic film industry. Laufey, you can continue. What is the tools and what is the miracle? How did you do it and doing all the time?
Well, I think, as Baltasar said, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes a long time. And nothing really happened there were very few exceptions here in Iceland with the establishment of the Film Fund in the 80s. And it took decades to build it up. First, the technical part of it, building up a network with collaborators, co-producers in other countries that also, and that's not about money only, it's also about the know-how and expanding the talent pool. So in the 90s, you know, it started to grow, and all the technical problems were solved. We remember, most of us, that we left the cinema in 92 and said, oh, the sound was good. But that's easier nowadays with technology, obviously. But I think in 2000, with the establishment of the Film Center, we got more possibilities to build up the framework in a more diverse way that I think was successful in supporting the filmmakers, because it was before it was a rather narrow, only one application a year and so on, which was difficult for filmmakers. But I think also with the establishment of a special short films and documentary fund, and then a TV fund that started in 2003 and has grown and was actually doubled this year by the government. I think the government has really been supportive, very supportive, but we also have to remember that it's not only the money from the government, it's a lot of investment from individuals through history here in Iceland and everywhere, and we just have to value that and be aware how long it takes to build up a good talent pool. I think only about 13, 14 years ago, we would have maybe one perfect set of crew, and now I would say 5. And
so that's not such a long time.
that's very fast in world history, I think, you know, with comparison. But that's because of the dual effect of both the film fund and the reimbursement scheme. And somehow, as with everything, if things start to spiral in the right way, you know, it multiplies.
Yes.
So we've been very lucky in that. And then also I'm often asked, you know, what's the magic? I think my standard answer nowadays is that for 1,000 years nothing happened here. So now all the creative it's like a volcano, you know.
Yeah. But is it true that every Icelandic person is writing at least one book?
Yeah, and
the script, and the poems.
And poems, a lot of poems, and the dream of doing a lot of things. And many are actually doing a lot of things, yes.
Okay, so thank you. And Lajla, Utsi, about the Arctic Indigenous Film Fund, tell the story about it.
So the Arctic Indigenous Film Fund was an initiative from us at the Sámi Film Institute in 2018, when also Baltasar and the whole European Film Academy board came to go the gate up to Sápmi. And because we had been working internationally from the very beginning, since the establishment of the Sámi Film Institute. And of course, we, as everyone, has noticed that the Arctic is becoming, you know, the geopolitical center and the hotspot, and everyone is really talking about the Arctic. And also talking about indigenous peoples, which is, of course, in our opinion, very good. But the Arctic Indigenous Film Fund is a platform and a network to support Arctic indigenous co-productions and productions in that perspective. So instead of thinking always north-south co-productions and collaborations, we can collaborate with Baltasar here in Iceland, or we can collaborate with Canada or Russia. And then we have very strong partners in the fund, like Canada Media Fund and Nunavut Film Development Corporation in Canada also. And then we have Saha Film in Yakutia in Russia, Film GL, Greenlandic Film Association, and then our film institute in Sápmi, Sámi Film
and
Institute.
Sundance Institute. Don't.
Yeah, and Sundance Film Institute in United States. So it's a strong partnership of dedicated partners who are building it up. And of course now we have like Baltasar as an ambassador, and also Nukaka Koster Valdau, who is a wonderful actor from Greenland, and also Nikolai Coster-Waldau, who is a very famous Game of Thrones actor, and among other. Yeah, so our idea is that, like I have been listening to the sessions also during the Arctic Circle, and it has been really inspiring because I think in all the sessions I have been to, everyone is talking about the importance of listening to indigenous peoples. Because the Arctic is indigenous. It is the homeland of very many indigenous peoples. And of course, film in that sense is a very exciting tool and so powerful. And for example, like Baltasar, you were talking about Katla, which was like a big production during COVID.
Yes.
And how many people you are, you know, are getting jobs in a big production like that. So it's both the voice that each film creates when it meets the audience, but it's also all the wonderful creative work possibilities here at home, which is the exciting thing. So that's the idea.
Thank you. We were in the back room. We had a very good discussion about about how we are doing together things. And for example, it is a big example. You said there is a big platform, Apple, who is interested, one group in the Russian north. Are you any connection there? And we said, of course we have. Let's start to talk about this kind of big production. And this is the way the Arctic Indigenous Film Fund is working. It's working like in personally contacts and the platform. It's very difficult to go all over the places, but if you are indigenous and you have already this network, it's working.
Yeah, you can be directed to the right place, you know, to get help.
Yeah, and you can get genuinely the indigenous peoples inside to the productions, and the impact is going to them.